Unit 9 is the sensory system. The sensory system is intimately related with the nervous system, which is why these two units fall in the same week. In the nervous system, we talked about sensory neurons, interneurons, and motor neurons. But the question we have to ask is, how do those sensory neurons actually get stimulated in order to send a signal along the neuron? The sensory system is responsible for that. And so the sensory system is involved in things like touch and sight, taste, smell, and hearing. But we want to take a closer look at the exact function of those different senses and how they ultimately trigger a sensory neuron to fire. So let's start by taking a look at the different types of receptors and what they're stimulated by in the sensory system. So the first type of receptor is the chemoreceptors, and these are stimulated by changes in chemical concentration. This is related to things like taste and to smell. So when we put food in our mouth, there's chemicals that food is made out of, and our taste receptors are chemoreceptors that are stimulated by the changes in those chemicals that are in the food. Similarly, in our nose, there are receptors for the chemicals that are in the air we're breathing that are then stimulated as those chemical concentrations change. Nociceptors, or pain receptors, are stimulated by tissue damage. Thermoreceptors are stimulated by changes in temperature. Mechanoreceptors are stimulated by changes in pressure or movement of fluids. One example of this would be a change in pressure due to touch. The process of movement in fluids is related more to hearing and balance. And so we have fluid in our ears that moves upon hearing sound and then stimulates sensory neurons. Photoreceptors are stimulated by light energy. There are two categories of senses, special and general senses, and we want to give examples of each here. So let's start with general senses. The general senses include things like pain, and we just talked about pain and the nociceptors that ultimately are stimulated when an injury like putting a finger on a sharp object or getting a cut in some way occurs. Touch and pressure are related to those mechanoreceptors that we just talked about. So within our skin, there are mechanical receptors that as we touch something or as something causes pressure against our skin, they sense that and stimulate sensory neurons. Temperature is sensed by thermoreceptors, as we mentioned in the previous slide. So our body can actually process heat or cold because those thermoreceptors will be stimulated by either one of those and then will stimulate sensory neurons to bring that information to the brain. The last type of general sense is proprioception. These are mechanoreceptors that are ultimately found in things like our tendons and our muscles. And proprioception is the concept of your body knowing where your different body parts are relative to each other without us consciously having to think about it. It's kind of a weird one to think about because you tend to know where your arms and legs are consciously, but proprioception is the idea of I can actually make complex movements and my brain is constantly getting information about where my body parts are relative to each other. The special senses include things like smell, taste, sight, and sound. And we're going to look at these special senses as we continue through this unit.